That very last paragraph that Kelsey just read for us. Son though he was, he learned obedience from what he suffered. Obedience means to listen. That's truly all that the word obedience means. It means to listen. In some cases, to listen again. Greetings, everyone. Not too long ago, I was out for, I don't know whether to call it a brisk walk or a run. We'll use the phrase run, it sounds better. I was out for a run. And of course, I was wearing what you wear when you go out for a run. And as I was kind of walking, running, brisking along, I saw in the distance someone coming toward me who I knew from the neighborhood. And as we got closer to one another, I was all ready to say hi, except she looked at me, but didn't initially recognize me until I said, "Hey, Helen." And she looked and she said, "Oh, Father, I didn't recognize you without your black shirt." Of course, I didn't have my priestly shirt on. I was out for a run. "I didn't recognize you without your black shirt." It got me thinking of the different kind of coverings, clothings, cloaks that we wear. You indeed would recognize your parish priest from his black shirt and collar. You would recognize your doctor from his or her lab coat or scrubs. You would recognize a friend who might be a judge from his or her robes. We recognize police officers because of their blue uniforms. We recognize firefighters because of their rain garb, water garb, and fluorescent tape very often. We very often recognize one another because of the clothing, uniforms, shirts, cloaks that we wear. Our Blessed Lady, in her role as intercessor for us, wears many cloaks. She wears the cloak of mother. She wears the cloak of she who was conceived without sin. She wears the cloak of the one assumed into heaven because of her role in the salvation of our human story. Today, we are invited to look at one of the many cloaks that we can say she's worn for us. Today, the cloak of sorrow. Mary stood there day after day in the life of Jesus, age after age, from the time that Simeon spoke to her in the temple of the sorrows that she would carry, Jesus being lost in the temple, the flight into Egypt, today standing by the foot of his cross. Mary's life was not an easy one. And yet, through it all, she stood by her son. Through it all, Mary, wearing a cloak of sorrow, was able to find strength, endurance, perseverance, because of the faith that she had in her God. A God that from the very beginning of the role that she would put on, at the moment that the angel spoke those words to her, her response, "I am the handmaid of the Lord. I do believe in the presence of God in my life. Be it done unto me as you say." She said, yes. And with that yes, throughout the course of her life, during moments of joy, during moments of sorrow, She always allowed the relationship that she had with her God, and I'm sure in many ways, eventually with God through her Son, she allowed that to carry her through. Again, going back to that first line from the first reading from Hebrews. Son though he was, Jesus learned obedience through what he suffered. Jesus listened to his Father. Jesus knew that no matter what he faced, he didn't face it alone. His Father would be his strength. The presence of his Father in his life shone through. When we look at Jesus, we are invited to see the light of resurrection, whether we are standing in joy or in sorrow. When I read the gospel last night, getting ready for our prayer this day, I couldn't help but think of that conversation that Mary and Jesus had at the wedding feast in Cana, when she said to a group of worried family members, a wedding reception that ran out of wine, she didn't know how her son would handle it. She didn't know what he would do. She had no idea. But what she did know was that whatever he invited them to do is what they needed to do. She said quite simply, listen to him. Listen to him. Obey him. My friends, once again, the word obey means to listen again. Listen to my Son. In the gospel this day, as Jesus hung on the cross for us, he gave to his beloved disciple, he gave to his church, he gave to us, our Blessed Lady. And just as she said, listen to him, today on this memorial of Our Lady of Sorrows, we're reminded that he says to us, look at her. When sorrow touches your life, when sadness touches your life, when burden touches your life, look at her. She stood by me, and she knew when I rose from the dead that strength came from God. He says the same to us this day. As Mary was able to wear the cloak of sorrow, we too can face any burden, any challenge, any moment of sadness, knowing that no matter what it is, in the midst of it all stands Jesus with us, offering in some way his peace, his joy, his calm, his light.